can't get her out. It's the rules. And they were running these clinical trials, including the clinical trial that essentially, by tweaking the dosing, etc., made it so that they came up with a result suggesting that ivermectin was not effective. There was a whole lot of manipulation. And the why part, still the best explanation I've heard is that it had a lot to do with the risk that if there was an effective countermeasure, then the utilization of the PrEP Act and the emergency countermeasures to process to enable fast tracking of these vaccines using this new technology would no longer be valid. Because those are the rules, is if there's an existing countermeasure, then you can't implement those clauses.
So it's all about emergency use authorization.
I don't know that that's the case. It is.
It's the only thing that makes sense when you see how much profit they made.
Which was enormous.
Enormous. So it was effective. And all that propaganda, regardless of how much exposed their methods, they made hundreds of billions of dollars.
And that's the ugly part of all of this. I mean, people, the big picture, when I talk to people that are still kind of on the fence, trying to make sense out of it, there's still a lot of those folks out there. The thing that kind of gets into their brain is the greatest upward transfer of wealth in modern history occurred during COVID. It wasn't just the vaccines. It was the whole enterprise.
With the
lockdowns, all the what was done to small businesses, what was done to the economy, the stimulus packages. They're still digging out of all of that fraud. In retrospect, for average folks that are just trying to put food on the table and to look at, in retrospect, what quite literally the middle class was hollowed out on hyper. So I'm still pissed off about this.
Well, you should be. The thing is, not enough people are, and so many people let it go. And part of the reason why not enough people are pissed off about it is because they took the vaccine and they want to justify the decision. And you will talk to a lot of people that make this blanket claim the vaccine saves millions of lives. And they'll just say that.
Because that's the propaganda along with safe and effective. That was a promoted narrative, and that was, by the way, the rationale given by the Nobel Prize Committee to award to curriculum licensing was that these products, which the thesis is they had been playing the central role. I just should have got it. You're going to give it. These vaccines, it was Peter Cullis and his team at UBC that really was enabling tech. But be that as it may, the decision was made, and the committee said basically millions of lives have been saved. And by giving this Nobel at this time, we hope that it will promote more people to accept this product. That was explicitly the logic given at the time. And that reflects what was really a thrust vector. Joe, what a bizarre world since and so I've been sucked into to call it the center right of Europe is a little bit of a misnomer. But compared to the far left, they're labeled as neo-Nazis. But I've been traveling to Europe, interacting with these people. I think it was bad for us. The European Union, UK, Canada, where it organized. We should be so grateful that we live in this country, and that we still have something like suckers in Australia and New Zealand. the same game that they played against Trump of Russian collusion. They played that same book in Romania successfully. But in the European Union environment, under the European Council, they don't, they ain't got a constitution. And they can just step right in and throw you in jail, inactivate your candidacy, do whatever if you represent a populist threat to the existing structure. We talk about the deep state, but it doesn't, yeah, it's a problem. But, and thank Mike Pence, I defer to as a notable expert in this space. But it's a lot worse in Europe, in Australia, Canada, and the UK, and I think we're parallel to the United States, but people like Bobby are making progress, and these dissident positions that have risked so many things. I'm just one. I hear people saying, "Oh, Robert, they've been so mean to you." I think they've been mean to me. Then look at what they did to Bobby. And then, look, I don't have a nick out of my ear. Look at what they did to Trump. What they did to me is just, I'm nobody compared to that, and they're willing to deploy that kind of capability against me. Think about what's really going on at the higher levels where the big games are being played. And, at least we can see it now. At least we have, for those of us that have our eyes open, we have some ability to be aware. But what I've spent the last 2 years trying to convince people about, I hardly ever talk about myself. I sit on, Joe, I gotta give a caveat. Forgive me. The opinions I'm expressing here are my own, not those of the U.S. government, the CDC, or the ACIP. There, I said it. Okay. But we're in a moment where we're seeing how the levers, the gears of how all this works. I'll give you an example. Tomorrow, Friday, February 13th. What's the possibility? Hopefully my plane flight out. And they don't have a drone or something, right? So tomorrow there's a lawsuit filed on behalf of the American that seeks to shut down the advisory committee of immigration practices and the changes that Bobby's made, and force all of that to go back to the way things were when it was functionally controlled by the professional societies, particularly the American Academy of Pediatrics. They money and power, in my mind.
The power.
Yeah.
They don't want power without money. They
Or-
want to benefit from that power.
I believe for the likes of Larry Page and Bill Gates, they can't stand what they have.
Right.
It's a marker. It's like chips. You're stacking up chips.
Right. Their scores and
Yeah. And
but also captured by their past actions, constantly trying to obfuscate from all the things that they have done in the past. Like you just went into Bill Gates' stuff that he did in Africa.
Oh.
Giving children polio with the polio vaccine. It was from the AP News.
Africa I mean, he's kind of banned. So I don't get it. I don't get where these people live. I'm happy. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I can walk away from all this stuff. It's just kind of a sense of obligation. What are you going to do when you're 60? You have this opportunity to impact in a positive way on the world on your way out. Who wouldn't take it? Well, I guess a lot of people wouldn't. But I don't have a need to have power. I have, thank God for my Substack subscribers, I have all that I need. My wife is happy. My horses are fed. My farm is paid off. And I have the luxury of doing good works. And that's enough. I don't get this global power thrust and hunger.
Not what you do. That's not your thing. But if you were a politician or you were some megalomaniacal billionaire sort of business character that just wants to dominate and was involved in a bunch of antitrust lawsuits in the past, that would be
Not that we're naming any names.
Not that we're naming any names that bribed off multimedia corporations to the tune of $300+ million so that they wouldn't write bad stories about it.
Functionally owns the World Health Organization.
Right. And a giant chunk of American farmland was for a while trying to push that fake meat shit on everybody until that dropped off a cliff.
Yeah, so the business models aren't working out so good for the globalists, are they?
I think a lot of it is because of information that's available now. Yeah. And you can't control, like, one of the things that did happen during COVID is these places like CNN, people stopped going to for information. They don't believe them anymore. There's just too much bullshit, and no one got in trouble for spreading that bullshit. There was no corrections, no redactions, no apologies, and so
acknowledgement.
People now, more than ever in my lifetime, mistrust mainstream media, and polls show that. The polls show that the trust of mainstream media is at an all-time low. For good reason. They did it to themselves. They prostituted themselves out to the pharmaceutical drug companies. They had to say what they had to say on television. People knew what they were saying was incorrect, and now no one trusts them.
So, to this day, about 4 years ago, I read a report from the Trust of News Station. Remember the team
Yeah.
was launched by the BBC to counter Russian disinformation and then repurposed to counter vaccine disinformation. And I read this report about I'd gone on your show. So I was a little bit of a so I'm reading this report, and then they're talking about threats to the industry because TNI is basically another trade organization. It's not a guild. It's a global major media guild, and so they're doing this internal analysis and reporting, and they're talking about the risk vectors that they face, and they had a whole great big section of Joe Rogan represents that was their threat. That was the major threat to their business model is you and what you represent. You as a metaphor for this new information economy. And by God, they called it right. And when this has been part of my journey. When I realized what I was experiencing, what it meant to come on their show, have that event occur, which by the way, blew up my subscribers on Substack. Thank you so much. I still get a wave every year about in the month following, so January, I get a big bump in revenue.
Well, it blew
I had. Oh yeah, please.
What's the Spotify subscribers? I know YouTube is over 20 million. What is Spotify at?
So while he's looking that up, I had this bizarre experience. I'm just an old gray-haired guy. I'm about to have my 47th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
I would have 20-year-olds come up in the street and fist bump me. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, well, they don't have a representative. I mean, they don't see
All
anyone.
males.
Yes, males. Those males don't have anybody in mainstream news that represents anything that resembles them. I mean, I know I'm much older than them, but I never went down this path of decay and weirdness that a lot of adult males go into corporate business and industry, and they become something unrecognizable to these young men who have freedom in life, and they're being suppressed, and they're being told that they're toxic.
That was a singer right there.
Yeah.
Young men that have freedom in life.
Yeah.
And then they compromise.
They don't want to be what their dad is. They don't want to be what their uncle is. They don't want to be these people that they work for. They're like, what is this fucking bullshit like? I don't want that. I know I'm being lied to. I know the news is full of shit. And I know that this one guy who is also a cage fighting commentator and a comedian and doesn't have to lie. Like, I don't have a boss, really. I mean, Spotify promotes the show, they put the show out, we're in partnership with them, but there's no one telling me what to do, which is why you're here right now. Because there's no one, I don't have a conversation with no one. I literally, reach out to my guy and say, hey, contact Mr. Malone, and let's get him back on.
All I know is I got a message through X.
Yeah, well, that was
saying, Joe Rogan, do you want to come on?
That was actually me. That message is me, which I rarely use those things, but I was trying to figure out how to contact you. So I reached out to you there, and then I sent it to my guy, and he takes care of it. Like, that's it. There's no one else. There's no one involved in all that, which you can still be you that way. As soon as you get involved in enormous groups of humans and a bunch of boards, you have to sit down at a table with other executives, you have to make decisions based on the profitability of the company and shareholders and stuff. I have none of that. Yeah. It's a skeleton.
So, as I look back, the question, why were you able to do this? Why were you able to
Well, Robert Malone, that name became a majority. Yeah. It became like, oh, we have that Malone guy.
Yeah, it's all weapons.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, I tour, do these rallies and stuff like this, and my wife, it really makes me laugh. I'm middle-aged women come up to me and they want to have self, and I get this, oh, Dr. Malone, you were so brave, you're such a hero, kind of stuff, which I frankly find sweet, but why was that? Yeah, I guess defend the nation. But why was it this week? I think a big part of it was I had no staff. And like you say, I've been about a decade being a consultant, free-living consultant, and it gotten under my skin. I've always been independent, farmer, carpenter kind of stuff, and that's, I guess, been part of my problem is I just don't fit in corporate life. I can't suck up to people, and it's just not in me.
Well, it's a very unhealthy environment for anybody to get sucked into that bizarre groupthink. It's just
good word. Yeah.
That's
So
what it is, right?
This decentralized subscriber base model. The epiphany was, one of those moments when I because I have the truth is, I have guardians that constrain me the way that I used to be constrained. We're talking about it sometimes. I have to live in this world. I interface with staff and other people, and now I'm living with big companies. I have to be more mindful.
What is your function? Like, what do you do over there? At state or both? When you work for the government, like, how do they use your services?
So, the special government employee category is a designation from the executive. It's the one that Elon had. I like to say I'm in the same category as Elon was, only without all the money. He was an SG without pay. And because I serve on the advisory committee on organization practices, which is this, we call it, it's a FACA committee, federal advisory committee, advises the directors of vaccine policy. So I'm the vice chair, which is the chair isn't there. I draw the short straw, and now I have to chair those bloody meetings. For the most part, I sit on these subcommittees. I sit on the Public Working Group subcommittee. I'm not supposed to talk about the next meeting. I was told 2 days ago. So that's one of my guardrails. But stay tuned for what is going to come down if the AAP lawsuit doesn't prevail and we're allowed to actually have a meeting. So that's that. I'm also the chair of the Influenza Working Group. And now I am, from time to time, the secretary asks me to help him sort out some issue. I'll get a phone call. I once got a phone call on the Big Island. This recent series of rallies to try to, to recap, the whole reason why we did that first hit was to try to publicize the Stop the Mandates rally in D.C. That was the subtext for that. As you recall, and I forgot to even mention it. We had to go back in to do another shoot for that, remember? I'm still fighting that same battle, trying to stop these mandated vaccines. So I'm sitting there in Hawaii, going to another one of these rallies. I get a call out of the blue from one of Bobby's people, and they want some advice about a topic having to do with the decision he has to make about spending money on another biotech submission. So I get that kind of stuff. He called me soon after he was confirmed to get my opinion about what was going on in the chicken industry and all the slaughter that was happening for bird flu. And I told him it doesn't make sense. It's not good policy. There's no way people get bird flu doing this. It's in the wild bird populations, and this is just nonsense. Why do you think they do that? Okay, so that's interesting. That now we drive into kind of public health and vaccinology. You're asking the why, and it's been a long-standing policy. They do it every time. It's and any other outbreak. So right now in Spain, I just wrote an essay about this. It's maybe the biggest review of what's going on in Spain. There's a Spanish research lab that's been collaborating with the USDA that is investigating swine fever virus. They're actually doing joint country research. Swine fever virus, African swine fever virus, kills and already China has locked down and will not accept Spanish pork. And it is a lab leak. on, it's become entrenched as policy, as kind of this reflexive, knee-jerk thing, that if we have an outbreak, what we do is we kill, because we can't control the virus, and the things that we could do to control the virus aren't really going to control it, and it's actually going to make things worse.
Is there any logic to that?
We can argue at the margins. We can argue at the margins, but when you've got something that, if you had something that didn't have a natural reservoir, then you can make the case that you could eliminate it with that geographic population and keep it from spreading outside. But when you have a natural reservoir,
Explain that. Explain the natural reservoir.
okay, in the case of avian influenza, waterfowl, migratory birds, are amazing vectors for carrying and propagating influenza. And influenza survives in water for a very long period of time. And so you've got ducks and geese traveling north to south all over every continent that are susceptible to infection by avian influenza and all the other migratory birds, but in particular the waterfowl, like alligators, wrapping head away. So these birds carry the flu, and a number of them are relatively resistant. They've been subjected to avian influenza for centuries or millennia. And sometimes you'll get a variant come out that'll wipe out a whole bunch of birds. West Nile virus in crows is a great example. And now you have crow populations coming back that are resistant to West Nile. We haven't gotten rid of West Nile. We've just bred more resistant birds. That's Brett Weinstein's thoughts, right? That's evolution. And so if you have a natural animal reservoir, like ticks and wine no, that's not practical. Thou tried to kill birds because of the thesis that they were eating up all the spare grain and compromising the birds' population. And what happened? Major ecological catastrophe. You can't eliminate birds. You can't go and kill all the waterfowl. That would just be ecologically insane. But, sometimes we do insane things. And in the case of avian influenza, it's there. It's endemic. It's in all that migratory waterfowl. They poop an amazing amount of influenza. It gets in the water supply. The water supply goes everywhere. Small birds are interacting with, I don't know if you've ever been around a chicken barn or turkey barn. Okay, yeah, there's chickens and then there's commercial chickens, right? So these operations are like stuff's happening. And the only way you can interfere with it, and by the way the Amish are starting to do it, is put something in the water supply. And what the Amish are using is a compound called hypochlorous acid. And it's stopping these things, and it's stopping the E. coli and a lot of other stuff. That's another problem, is when you have these momentum of these large government agencies with their consensus about the saying that the only time the FDA ever changes is if somebody in a key position retires or they kind of get entrenched in this is how we do things. We kill chickens. We have avian influenza come out, we kill chickens. And this is the beauty of Secretary Kennedy being kind of not invested in the way things are and the way we do things. And being willing to ask the question, does this really make sense? And that has been Harrison, obviously, still there to do that, to ask those questions, to have the president say, we need to restructure the vaccine schedule. Oh my God, the sky is falling, kids are going to die left and right, there's going to be death on the street because we ended the thimerosal or multi-dose influenza virus. to question these narratives, these long-held standing beliefs. And in the case of the bird flu, he called me up. I said, Bobby, I don't think this makes sense. I think what we really need to do is we need to breed resistant chickens. And the way we breed resistant chickens, and by the way, we've written about this all over the internet. There are in the domain of chicken coop. There are people that are just freaks of chickens. And all of these, but because of that, we have this huge repository of different cultivars of chickens. You could say they're all genetically bunch of research fields. And a number of those are relatively resistant to bird flu. Well, in a logical way, you would have Tysons, and maybe the government has to incentivize this, it should be. You would have Tysons in there saying, well, guys, what we need is a bird flu resistant chicken. Let's get on it. Okay? And that is essentially the position that the secretary took, is this policy of just extremely aggressive mass culling is not producing the outcome that we want. It has never produced the outcome that we want. It will never eliminate bird flu because it has an endemic reservoir, and we've got to think different. And now that's starting to percolate through the system, and there is more research into alternative strategies, including the possibility of various prophylactic interventions in feed and in water. That's, and in a lot of these chicken houses mist. As you recall, they have the misters because they got to control the temperatures. So they are set up with misters, and that can also be a way to deliver things that are non-toxic, like HOCl, that can knock out these viruses and E. coli and other things that cause reduced growth and loss of weight in chickens, which is the metric that Tyson's and those guys is food conversion. That's the metric they all pray to. There's different. We can think differently,